What's up? It's Monday morning. Glad you're here for another episode of the I'm Tanya, and today I thought we would talk about making our own vinegar. It is so easy to do, and every time I talk about this subject, I am just so shocked that more people don't make it themselves. It is an amazing beginner staple that you can start making at home and stocking your apothecaries with. And if you're not a beginner or novice, it's great for you all too. So most of us know all about apple cider vinegar, right? That's probably, and white vinegar. We're going to kind of stick with apple cider vinegar today. Most of us know about that. That is a fruit vinegar, but what you may not know is that a lot of vinegars can be made from all different kinds of fruit. Most fruits. We've made pear vinegar. We have done crabapple vinegar. We do apple vinegar. You can do so many different ones. And yes, the vinegars lend to similar flavor profiles of the fruit being used. So not only can you make use of scraps in your kitchen very easily by converting it to a vinegar, you can make all different kinds of vinegars. Awesome. So what's the coolest thing about vinegar? It is cheap to make and it is so good for you. And it takes scraps that you would otherwise possibly, dare I say, throw out and make something so useful of it. And not just useful, but literally so nutritious, full of vitamins and minerals. It is awesome for you. And all you need is sugar, water, and some scraps. Now, you don't even have to use a whole fruit. You're using peels and scraps. So you use the fruit for whatever you're doing, whatever you're baking, whatever jams you're working on, whatever you're crafting in your home, use that. And then we're going to take what's left and make our vinegar. Awesome. So my next question is, why are you buying expensive, organic, I won't say the name, not as good as it used to be, apple cider vinegars from the store when you can make gallons of it for like pennies? Seriously. And you have sugar, you have water at home. So let's take a look at some of the vinegars we already have. This one, see how it's kind of a red color? It is apple or crabapple vinegar. And this one, this is so good. This is pear vinegar, and we make this in the fall when the Bartlett pears are on the trees. We spend days making caramel pear pie filling. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And pear sauce. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the name. Pear sauce. And then all those scraps get converted into a pear vinegar, which honestly I think is more delicious than an apple vinegar. It is so good and so unique. This one, you can see some people wonder, hey, my ferment has white stuff on it. That's called, I think it's pronounced cam yeast. That is not mold. I don't know if you can see it here, but this is a great example of what I'm talking about. If you have this on any of your ferments, because let's face it, vinegar is basically a ferment, and we'll get into that more in a second. But if you have this on your ferments, that means you have a great, strong, active ferment. It is not mold. Your ferment is not bad. Let's take a look at that. See, it's kind of stuck to the jar. That is not bad. That is consumable. It's perfectly fine and a normal thing to see in a ferment. Today, our family used apples, and so we're going to make apple cider vinegar, probably the most traditional one you're used to. Here's apple peels, and that's what we're going to use. We're going to avoid the cores, mainly because of the apple seeds in there contain traces of arsenic. Would it be enough, to poison us or make us ill if we made apple cider vinegar with the cores with a few of the seeds? Probably not, but I just don't like the thought of that, so I avoid it myself. So what is vinegar? Vinegar is essentially a ferment. You're going to submerge your peels into a sugar water. To think about it like this, the sugar is food for the ferment. So during the natural fermented process, all those sugars are ate up and converted into yeast and healthy bacteria. So like, yes, we're putting sugar in it. Yes, the fruit has sugar, but that's more feeding the ferment, feeding the bacteria to create healthy yeast. Vinegar is acidic and contains about 5 to 8% acidity. The acid is a byproduct of the fermentation process. When you're making vinegar, it's going to go through several phases. The first phase of the fermentation after it's been sitting for about a week or two, it is going to build alcohol and ethanol. But then on the weeks prior to that, from weeks 3 to 6 and beyond, that also gets converted into acid. So does vinegar contain alcohol? Yes, maybe trace amounts like 0.25%, very little. So that's up to you, something to consider. All vinegars do, but we also have to remember that our body naturally produces alcohol almost in the same percent on a daily basis. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so what can you do with vinegar? You can do so much. And now that you're making your own, you can do more than you ever have. You can use it more than you ever have. You don't have to save it and portion it out, your precious expensive vinegar. Make it with meager ingredients and then use it heartily. In our family, we use vinegar for drinking. It is excellent to take internally as a health supplement to provide minerals to your digestive system. When taking vinegar internally, it can improve your triglyceride levels. It can lower your LDL cholesterol, which is your bad cholesterol. And some research suggests that consuming vinegar helps reduce your risk of getting metabolic disorder, which is a condition that leads to type 2 diabetes. Not only does taking a shot of vinegar a day help keep away those diseases, it also provides an excellent source of potassium and calcium and phosphorus. So look at it as a health supplement. And above all else, one of my favorite nutrients that vinegar supplements our bodies with is magnesium. Did you know that vinegar is an excellent source of magnesium? Magnesium is an important part of your body's signaling system. And studies show that consuming enough magnesium lowers your chances to get cataracts, diabetes type 2 again, also helps ensure your cholesterol is lower again. So we can see why consuming vinegar is good for us. We also use it for canning, for preserving other foods. We also use it in our hair for hair rinses. We also use it for cleaning, though it's not necessarily antibacterial. It is great for wiping down surfaces if you're not looking to totally sterilize something. All right, so let's review. Vinegar is super easy to make, super cost effective. Also makes something from nothing. I love that. It is healthy for you. It gives you things like phosphorus and magnesium. It can help reduce your chances of diabetes too. It can help lower your LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol. Can help improve migraines and keep your heart healthy. The benefits are numerous. You can clean with it, rinse your hair with it. So let's make some. I'll show you how easy it is. I feel like once you see how easy it is, you're gonna wanna run out and make an apple pie and then make some vinegar right afterwards. The hardest part about this recipe is the fact that you have to wait 4 to 6 weeks for it to be ready. All right, so let's get started. We are going to make about a gallon of vinegar. I do not measure out my scraps. How I do it is I stuff a sterilized glass jar full of my scraps. Then I'm going to fill it with water, ensure my scraps are fully submerged in the water. And for a gallon, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of sugar to feed my ferment. Then it's going to go somewhere on my countertop that's warm and out of the way, but where I also won't completely forget it, and allow it to ferment total for up to 6 weeks. After that, we have vinegar, and then you can just repeat the process again. So I have my glass jar, and again, it has been sterilized, which means you can wash it in a dishwasher on a hot setting. We don't have a dishwasher, so boiling your jar in hot water would be sufficient as well. Now we're just going to drop our scraps into our jar here. Now you can make any size of vinegar you want. If all you have is a quart available, make a quart. The directions will be the exact same. The smaller the amount, the less sugar you'll probably need to feed the ferment. I say 1 to 2 tablespoons of sugar will be sufficient. So I'm doing 2 for a gallon. Something smaller, adjust that down to probably 1 tablespoon of sugar. On our Instagram reel today, we did pear vinegar in a concise 1.5 minute video with some extra information. So if you want to see what pear vinegar looks like and how that's made, go check that reel out. But honestly, it's the exact same way. Any fruit that you want to try to make vinegar from, this is going to be the exact same recipe, so it's interchangeable. If you have citrus scraps, use that instead of apple. If you have crab apples, use those. If you have pears, use those. Get creative and just swap it out. It's going to be the same amount of water and the same amount of sugar. Now that my apple scraps are in, I'm going to fill up my jar with water. And again, you want everything to be fully submerged. This is probably the biggest key step of this whole recipe. If you don't have everything fully submersed in your water, you can potentially run the risk of it molding, the fruit molding and the whole ferment spoiling. So make sure everything is covered. If things keep floating up to the top throughout the fermentation process, look into adding a fermentation weight. A fermentation weight is anything that's going to hold the fruit, your scraps, under the water. That can be an official fermentation weight that you can find on, Amazon or various home stores, or it can be a plate. It can be a baggie with a bit of brine in it put in here, just something to ensure that it stays under the water for you. If it's staying under on its own, great, no need to worry. So now that everything is in here, the water and the scraps, I should say, we're going to add our sugar. So for this gallon, we're going to feed it 2 tablespoons. And again, this is a concept some people struggle with fermentation. They can't understand, or they think it's unhealthy to consume something that has sugar in it like this. But we have to understand the fermentation process is a chemical reaction. The bacteria in here is going to eat up this sugar and use it up and create something completely different. So this is going to be left with almost no sugar when we're said and done. All right, that is it. Can you believe it? That is literally it. Do not buy the lie that making home remedies and making nutritional things for your family is difficult. It does not have to be. Can you believe that you're spending almost $30 for a gallon of organic apple cider vinegar with the mother still in it when we can make it for like almost nothing here at home? Wow. Speaking of mothers, what is a mother? Have you heard of that? During this process, this ferment could possibly, now it doesn't always, but if you have a nice active ferment, it could possibly build essentially like a mushroom. It's made of cellulose, and it's this jelly disc that will either form on top or the bottom that is like a starter that can be transferred into a new batch of vinegar. And with those mothers, the beauty of it, you don't even need fruit scraps to start it. You would just take your mother out, put it in a jar of water, and add 2 tablespoons of sugar to that to feed it, and that would create another batch of vinegar, and you could just keep going from there in a perpetual cycle of vinegar making. Now, if your vinegar doesn't make a mother, that's okay. Doesn't mean your vinegar's bad. You just aren't extra lucky. And if that's the case, then what you can do is just reserve a cup of vinegar from this batch when it's all said and done, and add it to your water and add it to your sugar, and then you've made another batch, and then ferment that, and then you've made another batch of vinegar that way. So you don't always need food scraps once you start your vinegar to keep that vinegar going. All right, so now that we've covered that, let's lid our vinegar. We have a couple options here. I prefer plastic lids mainly because I don't have to worry about metal leaching into my ferments. Metal lids now are your second option, and they are totally fine, but if you're going to use a metal lid, I would suggest putting some parchment down first and then your lid over the top of it and seal it up. That way it provides a barrier and keeps that aluminum from leaking into your ferment during the 4 to 6 weeks it's fermenting. So what now? Where do we go from here? Like I've touched on, you might have heard already, this is going to take 4 to 6 weeks at least to make. Now, if you put this up and forget about it, it's okay. It can go longer, and actually the longer it goes, the stronger it gets. You need to at least let it ferment for those 4 weeks, because the first couple weeks there is going to be ethanol that's built in this, and it's going to be more like an apple cider, like a hard apple cider, like an alcoholic drink. So you need it to go at least 4 weeks so it can have time to convert that ethanol into acid, and so it's not alcohol. But at 2 weeks, we're going to strain off the fruit. Do you have to do that? No, but it can like help prevent fruit flies from coming. It kind of just helps clean up the vinegar, and it will still ferment. And when you pull those fruit scraps out, you can feed them off to your livestock, compost it, get creative, and have a creative way to use that even further. Again, that's almost a personal preference. You don't have to strain it at 2 weeks, or if you forget, again, that's okay. So what I'm going to do before anything else happens is I'm going to label this jar, because if you haven't heard me say it, I'll say it again. If you think you're gonna remember, you're not. So just label it, and even better, I'll put a date of when I started it, and then a 2-week date so I know to strain it, and then a 6-week date to help remind me that it's done. One of my favorite tools for labeling is like one of the most simplest. It's a Dymo label maker. These go back like to the 80s. This can be bought on Amazon. It's literally $18. It's heat transfer labels, so you don't need ink for it. All you need is labels, to fill it. And you literally just type in what it is, press print, cut it off, and put it on. For me, it's the easiest way to label things. They're waterproof. You can even wash your jars and it'll stay on. But when you want them to come off, they'll come off and not leave a sticky residue behind. So this, for me, has been my favorite tool for labeling all different things around the farm. All right, so ACV, which is apple cider vinegar, and today's date. All right, and now I'm just gonna print it. It prints out the side here. See it coming right there? There's my little tag. I'm gonna put it on here. And then, like I said, I'm gonna come back and strain this. Now, while it's fermenting, it is, again, a gas chemical reaction. It is going to build gases. It's going to become effervescent. That's one of the best things about fermentation is get the bubbliness. It adds a special treat. It makes you feel like when you're consuming something that's a ferment and it's effervescent, and almost lends to the feeling of having a nice pop, but it's not bad for you. So if those gases are building, if you have a very active ferment, you're gonna wanna do what's called burping your jar. And that's super easy. All that means is cracking that lid, listening to the gases come out and then tightening it again. And you'll see bubbles flow up from the bottom and top and release. You don't have to do that per se with vinegar. It doesn't get as bubbly, but you should keep an eye on it and do it if you need it. There's stories of things exploding. Yes, I suppose that could happen. It's super rare. The worst that's happened for me when I forget, because I have forgotten, they leak out and it makes a mess. I mean, that is a bummer, but no explosions for me. Then after the 2 weeks, I've strained it. We probably aren't going to see as many gases build, because the longer something ferments, all those gases start to settle and acclimate. So we probably can just let it go the next 4 additional weeks with no problem. Still keep an eye on it. And then at that time, it is ready to go, ready for consumption. We like to transfer it sometimes into amber glass jars that help keep it a little bit longer, or you can put it into spray bottles, keep it in the kitchen or the fridge for consuming so it's nice and cold and yummy. But there you have it. That is beginning to end of fruit vinegar making. I hope this encouraged you to run out and make your own. I know you can do it, and we're so grateful you joined us today for our pharmacy class with an F, and have a wonderful day.